takes courage to rest and play in a society where exhaustion is seen as a status symbol. Hi, I'm Ruth Martin Artist, and this is How to Rest. So I was talking to a friend the other day about how to rest. She asked me, how do you do it as someone who is chronically ill and disabled and needs to have rest as part of their kind of medical needs system? And as someone who needs rest a lot and has had to rest a lot over the last 7 years, I realized that it wasn't something that came naturally to me. It was a thing that I had to learn. It's a skill, knowing how to rest. So I thought I'd talk about it because I've learned a few things over the last 7 years, and I wanted to share with people just in case that might be helpful. And also to kind of talk about my experience with rest. So, as a bit of a background, I have been chronically ill and disabled for a long time, but it's been a lot worse in the last 5 years, I would say. I have multiple things that affect my pain, my fatigue, my mobility, and essentially, I spend about 60% of my time, at least 60% of my time, resting just on a daily basis. And that increases when I have a flare up or an infection or something that adds to that pain, fatigue, mobility. And I've learned that for me, full rest doesn't work because it causes other problems, but also not resting enough causes massive issues for me as well. And this is not meant to be medical advice, and please don't do anything that doesn't work for you because it's your body and you know what works best for it. So this is not a kind of advice for you kind of video. It's more of a, this is what I've done and this is what's helped me and this is my experience. So I wanted to talk about rest in terms of not knowing how to do it. And the reason I think we don't know how to rest is because we are rewarded to be productive. We are rewarded when we work, when we are out and about, when we're socializing. And the idea of kind of isolating and resting is kind of shunned in like normal society. And I do think that this comes from capitalism and the way that we are expected to work 9 to 5 every single day, like Monday to Friday. And I don't have the experience of doing that in the last 4 or 5 years. But from 6 years, 7 years before that, I was working. And I know that when I was working, it wasn't normal for me to take a day off because I was tired or because I needed rest. Like, that wasn't something that was allowed or like okay. And I think that that kind of seeps into every day in terms of, even mentally, I have the thing in my head, which is like I almost have a manager in my head that says, you shouldn't be resting, you should be working, you should be doing something. And so part of this is kind of how to get over that and how to also incorporate it into your rest. So the first thing I say is that rest is actually a massive kind of system. It's huge. It's actually way bigger than I realized when I first started becoming ill and needing to rest more. And my experience before I became ill was that I rested when I was sick. And even then, I would do like the minimal amount of time that I could to get away with it and then go back to college or work or whatever it was. But now I think I rest as much as I can when I can. Sometimes that's a choice. Most of the time, it's not. Most of the time, I am flattened out and I can't do anything about it and I just have to rest. But within that space, I have managed to find out what works for me, because the other thing is that rest is never rejuvenating for me. I never really feel energized. I never feel like if I have a nap or a sleep or whatever, I'm going to wake up and feel like, today's the day, because that's just part of my diseases. That's part of my chronic illness. So there are actually 7 types of rest. I don't know who decided there were 7, but probably someone, somewhere. And there's probably way more, and I think it's also very dependent on who you are as a person. So the first type of rest that you're probably familiar with is physical rest, and this is what I would say most people think of when they think about resting, and that is body rest. So it's slowing down, it's taking a day off work, it's laying in bed, it's having a nap, it's, I don't know, having a sleeping longer, like having a lie-in. Those kinds of things I think are what most people associate with rest. And it's a really big part of rest, but it's also not the only part. And in order to feel as rested as you can, I think it's really important to involve all of the elements of rest in some way or another. And that might sound like a really big task where you're like, I just want to have a nap. And that's totally okay. I think it becomes kind of intuitive the more you do it. So sometimes I will be sleeping for a few days and I still feel like this like emptiness, kind of depression, which does come with like sleeping or not, unfortunately. And I realized that I need to pivot and rest in a different way or add something in rather than take something away. And it's not going to be possible to do everything all the time, always. I think it's just about learning that you have multiple options in terms of rest. So for me, physical rest is having a nap. So most days I have like a 2 hour nap in the afternoon. For me, I don't set myself a timer unless I have something happening in the evening, because I just want my body to rest as much as it needs to. And that, if you are like that and you sleep like all night, it might be a good idea to set a timer. And I know that some people work with like REM sleep, so they sleep in 60 to 90-minute cycles or 30 minutes, and really is dependent on whatever you need. Like I have a friend who she only naps half an hour because if she sleeps any longer she feels awful. But for me, I find that if I don't sleep for 2 hours and if I try and sleep less, I feel really, really bad. And I've noticed that I naturally wake up at exactly 2 hours every single time, no matter how tired I am. Like what happens. And again, this happens with like practicing this more. So have a nap. Having a nap is great. Having a nap is wonderful. Have a nap however you want to do it. I have a friend that sleeps in the garden with a blanket. She loves that, and I love that for her. I personally stick the fan on, get the cat in, and I just lie down and I just sleep for 2 hours. Um, Another thing you can do is obviously sleep for longer. So for me, unfortunately, I can't do early nights, and I don't know why. It just doesn't work for me. So when I need to sleep, I just don't set an alarm the next day. And I am aware that this is kind of very unusual because most people have something to go and do in the day, but I am I don't work in a like normal job. I'm a painter and I'm also full-time chronically ill, so I'm kind of allowed. But I don't make myself feel bad if I need to sleep till 11 or 12, which happens a few times a week. And actually, when I allow myself to do that, it means that I can wake up more often at like 9 o'clock instead. I don't quite know how that works, but it does. So kind of just like letting yourself sleep for as much time as you need, with the kind of cautionary thing of, sleeping lots and lots and lots can attribute to kind of depressive feelings. So just kind of mindfully add in some more sleep and be aware of how you feel when you're sleeping and how you wake up. Another thing you can do is gentle movement. And I want to emphasize the word gentle because when you're resting, you shouldn't be pushing. You shouldn't be forcing yourself to do something that feels like painful or really uncomfortable. Like a little bit of like a stretch of uncomfort is okay. The kind of uncomfort that you get where you have a big stretch in the morning but it feels really nice, like that's the kind of level we're going with in terms of gentle movement. And for some people that can be doing their physio exercises or going swimming or going on a nice walk. For me, it's just stretching. It's stretching my legs in bed. It's stretching my pelvic area, like having a nice, like, big, deep breath, and like doing some very gentle yoga positions, child's pose, which is really gentle, and staying in those positions for a few minutes instead of like switching to one, like keep going. Like I just sit in one position and I just breathe. If you can't do that, like genuinely it's okay. And I again want to emphasize gentle. And something other than that you could do would maybe be some self massage. So I have these really lovely massage bars by Lush and I love them because they're solid, which means I don't have to like open a pot, squeeze it out, put it down, blah, blah, blah. I can just rest it on my leg so it warms up, and then I can use it on my other leg to like just give it a gentle massage. And it doesn't have to be a whole body thing, but something like that before bed is really nice because you're kind of moving things around in your muscles, you're moving your kind of, I don't know, juices, and it just feels nice. And again, we're not doing like deep like pushing, it's just like a gentle, like you can just like rub it in and just that can be your gentle movement. And it's just anything really that makes you feel rebalanced physically. So I know people that like to go on long walks or go swimming or do, whatever it is that works for them. For me, I often go out in my power chair and just like go around the block and just look at the birds. And that's physical for me. That's physical movement. So yeah, that's physical. The next type of rest is mental rest. So this is obviously mental stuff. So that means stressors. I'm thinking like less emotional, but more thinky. So when I get into mental distress, it's normally that I'm having a thought pattern that's going around and around and around and around, and I don't actually have any feelings attached to it. And that's when I know that it's more mental than it is emotional. And the idea is for mental rest is taking a break from the things that stress you out. And that doesn't have to be that you're avoiding stuff forever. It can be that you can set a timer and say, for an hour, I'm going to try and do something other than think about this thing. And I have found that anything, even if it's super urgent, like something is about to happen, I can always take 15 seconds to take a deep breath. I don't always remember this, but I know that it exists. And the rest of the time, I can take much longer to calm myself down, to take a break, to maybe meditate, to maybe write it down. I find writing it down really helpful, but sometimes I have to stop when I'm writing it because I can just go and go and go and go, and I can get myself more in a twist. So sometimes I write down bullet points of like what is happening and what isn't happening. So the kind of what's the thought and like how do I feel about the thought and what is true and what is false. And that I can do that and then move away from it. So I don't have to spend all this time thinking about it, going through it. Like, I put it down and I take a break. And I find the best way to turn my brain off is to either talk to someone else about their problems, which doesn't work in every situation because sometimes you don't have the capacity, but it helps me to get out my own head. The other thing I can do is watch TV. Your brain, I don't know if this is real, but I watched like a study or like saw a study once which was like that your brain, like the function is down when you're watching TV. And that's actually great. Like distract yourself with a nice film, like make some popcorn, like whatever it is, like just have an hour or two or a day to like take space away from whatever it is that's stressing you out. So it might be work, it might be health stuff, it might be admin stuff, it might be people. And that's another thing in terms of people, take a break from talking to people that stress you out because you don't actually have to talk to them all the time every day. Like you can just say like, hey, I'm going to be off my phone today, I'm going to take a break from texting, I'll check in with you tomorrow. And that's something that you can do to kind of take a break and get some mental rest. So that's mental rest, and there's lots of different ways to do this, but the idea is to pause and to kind of move away from that time. And of course, like there's other things that you can do, but just like having that intention to take a break from whatever is stressing you out is really important. The next one is emotional rest, and this is kind of similar to mental in terms of we're trying to take a break from the kind of emotional stimulation that might happen, and trying to find balance within your emotional state. So this can happen through therapy, meditation, journaling, or just doing something really nice for yourself. Like you could do like an at-home spa session, like you paint your nails, you can just like light a candle, put some incense on, read a book, like do something nice that like slows you down and stops that kind of emotional turmoil that's happening within you. And again, you can use the tools from mental rest, which is writing it down with the intention of taking a break from it. You can do some kind of self analysis kind of stuff where you go like, okay, this is the emotion, where do I think it came from, how can I take a break from it right now, again with the mental rest kind of stuff. Therapy as well, of course, brilliant. It's not always accessible to everyone, but you can also watch things on YouTube which are really helpful for kind of emotional regulation. For me, I find phoning someone and crying my eyes out really big step in emotional rest. And then afterwards, making sure I eat something, making sure I drink a lot of water, making sure I have a nap. Like all of these things can be within emotional rest, where you're taking a break from the things that are really emotionally stimulating. And another part of this, I think, is not watching shows that are emotionally stimulating. Yeah, so another part of this is hanging out with people that don't emotionally drain you, because I think we all have those people in our lives which unfortunately they require some energy. And so for me, most of the time I kind of only hang out with my best friends, not because I don't like other people, but because it's a lot less emotional energy for me to meet up with someone who knows me completely than it is to meet up with a new person. So I tend to phone my best friends when things are happening, and I also use the tools that I have from therapy. And there's lots of options in terms of therapy, 12-step programs, journaling, YouTube videos, online resources that you can look into and acquire to help you emotionally. So the next type of rest is social. So social rest. For me, this is either taking a break from seeing people or adding people in. So a lot of my life is spent in this room, in this bed, and that's why I filmed this video in this bed, because this is where I spend most of my days, most of my nights. And I think it can get really isolating being chronically ill. So my phone is probably, other than my cat, sentimental things and important things, it is my favorite non-sentient thing in the world, because I get to connect with my friends any time of day, anywhere in the world. And that is the most amazing thing ever. And I get to call people and video call people. And, I think connection is really, really important. And they've done studies on about connection and how it relates to chronic pain. And they found that people with chronic pain often find connection very difficult and they are very isolated. However, when they invite connection in, even if that's just in your head, your pain signals start to decrease and you start to have a more balanced nervous system. So there's this person that I love, and I use a lot as part of my kind of meditation routine, which is this woman called Vidyamala Burch. She runs a company called Breathworks, and the idea for that is basically it's a meditation company, and they kind of have trained teachers who are all over the world. But she invented it, kind of came up with it because she went through an injury and a disability and found that she was really, really struggling and meditation helped. And whenever I hear people say, especially doctors, oh, you should try meditation, I want to stick their head through the wall. And that's okay. That's okay. Because when you're looking for actual medical care and someone says you need to meditate, it makes sense you'd want to stick their head through a wall. But what I am saying with meditation is adding it in with medical care. So she does a meditation called the Connection Meditation, which I've done so many times, and they are all available on SoundCloud for free. She also has a free 12-week course or a 12-day course, I can't remember, where basically there's very small gentle exercises and meditations for like 5 or 10 minutes. And the idea is to kind of help you build your own practice. So the connection meditation I really love, because the idea is that when you're meditating, you think of someone that you absolutely love, someone who is a representative of all the people that you love, someone who does not cause you physical, emotional stress, someone who you can think of and you think, I love them. And for me, that's my best friend. And so in this meditation, you sit down, in your kind of mind's eye with them, and you try and connect with them and you send your love to them and all those kinds of things. And then as the meditation goes, you kind of get bigger and bigger and bigger. You involve people who are around you, in your house, in your town, in your city. And it's a really lovely grounding meditation and makes you realize that you actually aren't alone, even if you do feel it. So that's one type of social rest. And another is hanging out with people in person, or on FaceTime, or having a phone call with someone again who makes you feel loved, who makes you feel safe, and who doesn't stress you the fuck out. Another part of this is taking a break from people. If you are overwhelmed with socializing, maybe you work in an office, or you work with people and actually you see so many people every day and you can't fucking deal with it anymore, it's okay to kind of go underground and be a hermit for a few days. Like, that's totally fine if you need to do that. And as long as you have the intention of looking after yourself and you're not trying to isolate yourself, I think it's really great to take a break. And in those times, I can, reduce my screen time. I can just I can cancel plans, and it's okay to cancel plans even if you aren't in physical distress. If I'm listening to my body and being realistic about what I know to be true about my body and my expectations, to be really helpful, because then it means I can be honest with the person I'm meeting up with. So if I for example, if I have a plan with them on the Monday and I'm meant to go out for coffee with them, but on the Sunday night I start having intense pain, or I start feeling like I don't really want to do that tomorrow, and like I'm really tired and I've got to do this thing on Wednesday, and it's okay for me to text them and go, just letting you know, like on the Sunday night, just being like, I'm having these feelings right now and I just want to let you know that I might not be able to make it tomorrow. So I will check in with you in the morning and hopefully I'll be able to go, but I'm just letting you know that this is what I'm dealing with right now. And that for me mitigates a lot of the stress from, having plans and needing to stick to them. And I also always let people know that if there's a big event coming up, like if we're going to a concert or something like that, I always tell people, please, can you have a backup for me? Because if I can't go for whatever reason, I want to make sure that you can still go and you can still have a nice time. And that's fine too. That's okay to do that. It's just really helpful for me to honor my limits and also respect other people's time. The next type of rest is sensory. So this is taking a break from sensory overwhelm. This can be switching to things like analog media, which for me, recently I had a day where I didn't really use my phone, which I struggle to do because I'm often isolated, so I do use my phone a lot, but I didn't use my phone as much as I normally would have done. So I spent about 2 hours going through my record collection, sat in on the floor and reading all the like album covers, all the like leaflets, and listening to records on my record player and really like being in tune with it, because for half the album you have to then switch over. It's less sensory input. And another thing is like reading, and not listening to anything like, so for me sensory overwhelm is loud noises, heat or cold, bright lights, like media, like lots of stuff going on. At having a day or an hour or some time away from digital media can be really helpful. But also like do some drawing or play a card game, do some gardening in the shade. You could do something that takes you away from bright lights, loud noises, and intense sensory input. So you could also try using things like fidget toys and noise cancelling headphones and sunglasses. So every time I leave the house, I'm always like clad with like stuff, because I find light and sound really intense. So partially because I'm neurodivergent, partially because I am very sensitive to those things in terms of my pain signals. So I tend to wear sound cancelling headphones and sunglasses, and that really helps, especially if I'm in a store like B&M that have like those bright white lights. It's really helpful for me to have that, and it mitigates the amount of overwhelm that I have. Another thing I do when I'm really sensory overwhelmed is I put an eye mask on, block out the light, put earplugs in, block out the noise, and I have a nap. But yeah, it's also about whatever works for you. Like if you find something that's really helpful for your sensory kind of calming, then do it, and just, whatever that is. Sometimes people just need to lie on the floor. I love a lie on the floor. It's very grounding, very nice. So the next type of rest is creative. So this is doing something that sparks your imagination, and you may think that you aren't a creative person. I don't think those people exist. I think everyone is creative in their own way. Even if you're arranging food on a plate in a nice way, I think that's creative. And you're just doing something that ignites that imagination within you and invokes kind of playfulness. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to paint anything, you don't have to create a masterpiece. You could do something creative, like you could make spaghetti. That could be creative. Like you could do cooking, you could watch, like play a creative game, like something where you're building something. You could do coloring, you could write stories, you could listen to stories, um, you could do some decorating or DIY stuff, you could paint, you could play music, you could basically do anything that makes you feel happy and imaginative and kind of like a child. And this type of play I think is really rejected generally, because we don't dress up anymore, and we don't paint with chalk on the pavement anymore, and I think that's sad. I think we should do more of that. um I think people should play pretend more often. I think we should do fancy dress as grown-ups. And yeah, I think that creative rest has a massive impact on my life. I am an artist, and so when I go through phases where I can't create anything, it's awful. And it's changed. Like my creative practice has changed a lot, from painting big paintings to doing coloring in books, to doing digital drawings. That's really great because there's no mess and you can leave it and come back to it at any time. You don't need fancy equipment for that. If you've got an iPad and a fake Apple Pencil, you're set, babes. You could even do it on a Mac. You could do it on a Windows computer. You could use Paint, like the app. Do whatever you want, babes. Anything creative makes you think, yes, this is nice. And something that I've been listening to recently is the Tao of Pooh, which is it's actually quite an old book, but it's basically about Taoism and Winnie the Pooh, and it's really like imaginative and creative and really nice, and I love listening to it. So it doesn't have to be something that you're doing. You could also be listening to something that's nice. And the last type of rest is spiritual rest. So some people, of course, have religious practices or spiritual beliefs that they will work with, and that's a beautiful, wonderful thing. For me, I kind of believe in a higher power that isn't really fixed down. So I have lots of different things that I do for my spiritual practice. And in terms of rest, I sometimes just pray in my head. My higher power knows. They get it. I also meditate, as I said, like 1,000 times. And I don't always meditate like sat there for 20 minutes. I sometimes just like take a minute, breathe, feel my hands. And that's what I have to do. If you're non-religious or you don't practice any kind of spirituality, you can spend some time in nature. I feel like that really connects me to the earth and connects me to the world. And if you can't get out in nature, you can look out your window. If you don't have a window, you could listen to bird sounds online. You could read through books about birds or different animals, or watch a documentary on mushrooms. I've done that before. That's really nice. I love it. You can just watch outside for 5 minutes and see what happens. You can see all the little things that maybe you don't notice on a day-to-day basis, and that can give you a sense of grounding and a sense of knowing that you aren't the only person in the world. Because for me, that's the most important thing about my spiritual practice, is knowing that I'm not the only person in the world, and knowing that there's someone else out there who feels exactly the same as me right now. And the birds in the trees are still doing their thing, and they're going to be fine. And that's a really nice feeling. And someone's looking after them. It might be their mum, it might be the trees, I don't know. But it's nice. Of course, if you do have a religious practice, you can read your religious texts. You could listen to an audiobook of religious texts. There's so many podcasts and so many audiobooks about different religions. Like I said earlier, I'm listening to the Tao of Pooh, which is really nice. And, it's a really gentle way to learn about these things and to kind of invoke those practices. Like, it doesn't have to be super serious. Like, it's between you and your higher power. It's between you and the universe. Like, it's up to you. I also find spending time with my cat quite a nice thing to do, because the way that I feel about her is the way that I think my higher power feels about me, and that's a really nice feeling. And anything that really makes you feel kind of restful and balanced within spirituality or nature or the world, something like that. I also love sitting in the garden because it makes me feel very connected. And yeah, sound baths, sleep meditations, things that you can find on YouTube, which you don't have to focus on, you can just listen to in the background. And I have spoken a lot about, listening to things and doing things. And if you can't do that, that's okay. Like, there are different types of rest for a reason. And I think that it's about finding what works for you, but trying to have an element of all of these things. So a small thing that I do is that I do my makeup, and that's a part of my creative rest. Because when I do my makeup, even if it's not like perfect, or if I'm going to take it off an hour later, it makes me feel like myself. We aren't taught to rest. So it's okay if you don't get it straight away. It's okay if it takes you time to learn how to rest. It's okay if it feels uneasy. It's okay if it feels weird. And something that helps me when I'm feeling like I need to be productive and I shouldn't be resting, but I have to rest, is that I do something that makes me feel like I've done something. So when I was at uni and I was writing my dissertation, a lot of the time I was too unwell to like read something and sit up in bed. So what I would do is I'd put on a film or an audiobook or something like a podcast about the subject I was looking at or the artist that I was looking at. So I was studying about like Frida Kahlo as one of my artists, and I watched the film Frida, and it was a way to make me feel like I could connect with my art practice, and I could also honor what my body was saying to me. And if you don't listen to your body signals, they will get louder and louder and louder. Sometimes they're a whisper, sometimes it's a piano on your head. And I have found through trial and error, pushing through doesn't work for me, and neither does staying in bed all the time. And that's just what works for me. It's different for different people, and there is no judgment in the way that you decide to rest. But it's really important. And this isn't just about chronically ill people. It's also about people who just need to learn how to rest and need to learn how to stop. Because it can actually be really scary to stop. Because what happens when we stop is that the things that's chasing us stop as well. And we're both stood there. But I find over time, those things kind of stop chasing us, and they're just kind of in the plane around us. They're not like this close. And I think that, rest is such an important thing, and it isn't taught to us. Like, why do we stop having nap time? You know, like when we were kids, like 3 or 4 years old, and we go to nursery, you'd have nap time in the afternoon, and then that stops when you get older, and it's like, I'm still tired. I'm still doing stuff, like I should have nap time. Yeah, I'm also in a position where I can rest a lot, and I have to rest a lot. And there are also people who need full body rest. I'm really aware of people with severe ME who don't get the choice in how they rest. They just have to rest all the time. And I don't want to forget those people either. I hope this helps. Have a nap, have a nice cup of tea, talk to a friend, paint something, draw something, read a nice book. Do what you can to lift yourself up, and take it easy, because it's not something that happens immediately. It's a practice. Rest is a practice. It takes courage to rest and play in a society where exhaustion is seen as a status symbol, and that's Brene Brown. I've just been looking for rest as protest quotes, and I can't find the one I'm thinking of. But there's a lot of Black women who have written books and talked about this because their existence has always been political. And one of the women who said this is, rest is a form of resistance because it disrupts and pushes back against capitalism and white supremacy. And that is Tricia Hersey. And I am going to buy her book immediately because I love that. And rest is not a luxury or a privilege or a bonus we must wait for once we are burned out. And I really want to read that book now. Rest is political, rest is protest. Thank you for watching.